hit record. So I want to just thank you for joining us today for this really important conversation on the importance of community partnership to support Native American children and families. We have a really great panel today. We really want to just talk about a discussion to highlight the value of serving families through partnerships by breaking down barriers for service delivery. And I'm going to introduce our panelists in just a second. I'm Deanna Chancellor with the National Child Advocacy Resource Center out of the University of Montana, and we are located in the National Native Child Trauma Center. We're excited to be here. We've been tasked to do training and technical assistance for tribal MDT and CACs, tribal nations that want to develop an MDT and CAC, and also those partner agencies that are working with our tribal nations in the field today. So I just want to introduce our, I do want to tell everyone that we are recording this. And so just kind of an FYI for everybody. And I'm joined today by Kimmy Wind Hummingbird, who is one of our training and technical assistance managers. And Kimmy's going to watch the chat box. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat box, and we'll ask the panelists to impart some of their knowledge to us. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today. Well, let me tell you about our roadmap. So our objectives today is just to understand the significance of community partnership when engaging Native American children and families, to identify areas in which CACs may learn to collaborate with our tribal nations to better serve children and families, and as well to realize the importance of cultural humility when walking alongside our Native American children and families. So I'm going to introduce our speakers today. We have with the Choctaw Nation Ani Family Justice Center and our Choctaw Nation Ani House. We have Carrie Hurst, who is the Choctaw Nation MDT coordinator. Carrie has been a coordinator for the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. She's been in that position since January of 2022. And prior to this, Carrie was employed on a contract basis at the ABC House Child Advocacy Center in Durant as a forensic interviewer, in a position that she held for 7 years. Carrie began her career in child protection with OKDHS CPS investigator from 2012 to 16. She has a degree in human and family sciences from Northeastern State University, and she's just a really great girl. I enjoy working with Carrie, and she always has a great, wonderful knowledge to share, and she's always willing to share it with us. Sandy Hall is a Choctaw Nation project manager, and she's a tribal member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And she began her employment with the Choctaw Nation Health Services Authority in 2009 as the prevention specialist. In 2010, she began serving as the project coordinator for Choctaw Nation IHS DVPI grant. She is now the program manager over 3 grants, the IHS DVPP grant, the DOJ CTAS grant, and the DOJ OJJDP grant. Sandy also serves as the forensic interviewer and has conducted over 900 forensic interviews during her time with the Choctaw Nation Health Service Authority. She's a member of the Choctaw Nation Sexual Assault Response Team, serving as a victim advocate. As the program manager, Sandy works with child advocacy centers, multidisciplinary teams, sexual assault response teams, and Choctaw Nation victim service programs to ensure that victims are receiving care through a compassionate and responsive trauma-informed care system. She has attended the Advocate Core Training, Child First Oklahoma Training, Forensic Interview Training, and the DOJ National Indian Country Training Initiative Forensic Interviewing Training. Goodness, Sandy, you're busy.
Oh my gosh, I didn't write that, okay? It would have been short, 2 sentences.
It was a great introduction to Sandy. As when I was a CAC director, Sandy was one of our forensic interviewers that we could call on, and have always enjoyed working with her. The LeFlore County Child Advocacy Network is an accredited CAC located in southeastern Oklahoma and has been in operation for more than 25 years. And this is their really pretty CAC building and their logo. And Bethany Black joins us today. Bethany has a master's degree from Oklahoma State University and taught in the public school system for 4 years. Bethany currently serves as the executive director and full-time forensic interviewer with the LeFlore County Child Advocacy Network. She's been in the director position since February of 2023 and the forensic interviewer since October of 2020. Prior to October of 2020, Bethany performed adult forensic interviews for law enforcement as part of her role with the Women's Crisis Services of LeFlore County. And during her time at the LeFlore County Crisis Services, she served as a crisis advocate, a children's advocate, a relapse prevention specialist, and a community coordinator working under the Rape Prevention Education Grant through the OK Department of Health. And Bethany has been really busy too. So we want to just welcome them. And our last but not least is Ryan's House, the Pittsburgh County Child Abuse Response Efforts Incorporated. And Jessica Whitman joins us today. And Jessica joined Ryan's House in 2022 as a lead forensic interviewer. On April 1st, 2023, she was promoted to executive director. Congratulations to Jessica and Bethany. Jessica is a proud member of the Cherokee Nation and has lived in Choctaw territory since birth. Jessica is married with 3 beautiful children and has always had a passion for advocacy and law. Jessica has a bachelor's degree in psychology and criminal justice and recently completed her master's degree in early intervention and child development. She hopes to provide more outreach in her community with curriculums that are centered around body safety, cultural diversity awareness, and trauma-informed care. When she's not working, you can find her camping with her family or reading a new book. So welcome. So we're just gonna
biography. I'm sorry.
No, I those are awesome. You guys are also accomplished and have so many things to be proud of. We're glad to read those for you today. So we're just gonna start with our panel, and now that we've kind of done our introductions. And I do want to just give Carrie and Sandy a little bit of time. They have a really kind of unique situation, as that they began a tribal MDT and they are now working on 2 CACs. And so I just want to give them a little bit of time to talk about the story of their MDT beginnings and development.
Go, Sandy.
Nope, you go. You can start with the MDT.
Okay, so I came on board about a year ago, tasked with starting an MDT for the Choctaw Nation. As part of this process, Sandy was kind of over in the next lane, working on getting her CAC started. When I started this job, putting a CAC in Durant was not really on the map. It was, we were going to do an MDT only. And so as you know, I started that, I began reaching out to the state-run MDTs on the reservation and building relationships with them, getting to know how they operated and what that looked like and what worked for them and what didn't. And as things have kind of progressed, we have built wonderful relationships. I mean, just amazing. The level of collaboration that we have with the CACs that are currently serving our kiddos is unreal. You know, if I need information, if whatever it is, I get it. And if there's services that we can provide, all anybody has to do is reach out. And so it's just kind of like one giant cohesive unit for us.
So, of course, I started on the IHS grants back in 2011. So I was the first trained forensic interviewer for Choctaw Nation. And we were able to enter an MOU with Ryan's House at first and start providing forensic interview services for the CAC there. After a while, we started expanding into other counties within Choctaw Nation. And there became a need for a place in Choctaw County. Right now, our forensic interviews are taking place inside a police department. And then once Choctaw Nation had created the MDT, they pulled us out of the police department, and now we are doing them in just a very non-child friendly place. So we my program was already in the process of starting a grant and looking into a satellite off of LeFlore County to do a CAC in Choctaw County. So once McGirt ruling and Choctaw Nation MDT came into place, we needed more than just a satellite. And so we moved forward with being accredited. So we're moving forward to being an accredited CAC in Choctaw County.
I think they're on their way. We don't have any accredited tribal CACs in Oklahoma. And so I think that Choctaw is going to pave the way for that. And we're really excited for them. And I just wanted to give them a little bit of time to talk about their accomplishments. And they've done a lot in a very short time. And we're really proud of them and what they've done. And so we'll go ahead and get started on some of our questions today. And one of the things is, how did that collaboration begin? And so we kind of heard a little bit about that from Sandy. But Beth, would you like to talk about that collaboration with Choctaw Nation and what that looks like?
Yeah. So here at LCAN, we work super close with Choctaw Nation. I know it kind of started between Sandy and Deanna way before my time. And so I get to reap all the benefits of the hard work that the two of them put in. But right now we employ a Native American advocate and a Native American therapist who work strictly with our Native American kids. And a lot of those referrals come through Choctaw Nation. So through it's not family-centered services with Choctaw Nation, that's the state name, but through their ICW, we get those referrals. We also work closely with Choctaw Nation law enforcement. So we do forensic interviews here for the law enforcement in the North End. And Carrie and I work closely as far as MDT goes with staffing cases, not only on our MDT, but making sure that they're getting staffed with Choctaw Nation MDT as well. And like Deanna said earlier, Sandy has been one of our interviewers here at LCAN for a long time. And so I reach out to her quite frequently to say, hey, can you help me with this interview, or can you handle this interview for me? And she's super great about it. So we are super proud of the work that we do with Choctaw Nation. And I will always be an advocate that CACs and tribal nations should and do work really well together when both parties are on board. So I've never had a negative experience in the 5 years I've been working with Choctaw Nation. And I don't foresee having one in the future.
Thank you. Jessica, do you want to talk a little bit about the collaboration that you have with Choctaw Nation?
Yeah, so ours is pretty much kind of spot on with Bethany. Like I said, or like she said, we work really closely with Carrie, making sure that both of our MDTs are completely staffed. That's all tribal and non-tribal children. We also use Sandy and Jennifer as well for our forensic interviews. I've never been told no if I ever needed help from anyone, and that includes tribal police as well. We actually have tribal officers here on a weekly basis, whether it be to check on cases or actually I've had some donate clothing even, or other other things to our CAC. So when I say that it's a family, I can't describe it any more than that word. We truly are a family. And it's just, like she said, there's no negative experience with the collaboration we've had with Choctaw Nation. But like I said, it's very much just like what she described with the forensic interviews and the staffing. No issues whatsoever.
That's great. So we kind of talked about that's what your collaboration looks like together and what you provide for them. So Carrie or Sandy, do you want to talk about what that collaboration might look like from your perspective and what the state CACs, how that collaboration might benefit the victims that you serve?
Oh, absolutely. This collaboration just opens the doors for all children. I mean, not just Native children, but for all children, to receive the best services and try to receive the best outcomes, to make sure that no child falls through the cracks and that child is being followed up on, sometimes by one entity and sometimes by two or three. To me, we are all just an extension of one another. There is nothing that Beth could call me for and be like, hey, I need help with this. Just help me think outside the box. Or the same thing with Jessica. And I do that with them frequently as well. What do you guys have in your area that might suit this family? So it really looks like just one cohesive unit.
And also with Jessica mentioned Jennifer Heflin is also a forensic interviewer that we were able to bring on board and have trained, so that we could cover more, counties. In our grants, we had written specifically that we would serve tribal and non-tribal members, just because of the way that our layout of the counties, it's not just strictly a reservation, and it wasn't fair for me to come in and say, well, they're not tribal, I can't help you, especially sometimes they didn't have a forensic interviewer in office. So that was one collaboration that we was able to work with and say, what is your needs? So Jennifer and I are able to testify on a federal, state, and tribal level. So we made it work, and it seems to work. And if you don't have to reinvent the wheel, don't reinvent it,
How do you think it benefits the victims that you serve, Sandy?
I think well, as a forensic interviewer, one thing that helps the most is I actually work in the behavioral health department. So for the families, I'm coming from a mutual place, because a lot of times when the families come in, there is law enforcement and there is child welfare, and it's overwhelming. So working in behavioral health, as a forensic interviewer, sometimes the parents will tell me, I would like to get the child into counseling, so if they're tribal, I'm able to say, hey, these are the behavioral health departments, within your county. If they're non-tribal, that is something that we can work with the advocate there, or, the staff at the CAC and say, this is what we can help with.
Mm-hmm. Carrie, how do you think that collaboration benefits the children that you serve?
It adds to the number of people on their team, the number of people that are looking out for their best interest, for their safety, for their well-being. And it opens the door for a whole lot of services that may not otherwise be accessed.
Perfect. Beth, do you or Jessica want to speak to that, of how that collaboration helps the victims that you serve?
So it opens for us, it opens so many doors for services that might not be available on a state level that are available with Choctaw Nation. So for instance, if we have kids who have domestic violence exposure, we can partner with Choctaw Nation and their domestic violence prevention program, as well as our local shelter, which also works with Choctaw Nation, to get services that they wouldn't have access to otherwise, which is really nice for a lot of our families. And two, like Carrie said, it just puts more people on their team. So now they have not only Choctaw Nation working with them, but they have us working with them, and we're combining our services. So they're, instead of getting 1 or 2, they're getting 5 or 6. So they're getting all their needs met, when before we were kind of scrambling to say, well, I can't meet this need and I don't know who can. And now I can call Carrie and say, Carrie, I have a need. Who can meet it within Choctaw Nation? And she's either meeting it for me and meeting it for my family, or she's giving me the number of who to call, and vice versa. Because sometimes I know, like, we have kids in the southern part of Choctaw Nation who move up here, and Carrie's been working with them down there, and she calls me and says, hey, this family's coming up there. What services can we put them in touch with? So it's
Perfect.
great.
How it is with us as well. Like I said, the mental health aspect is just like, there's just endless possibilities as far as services for these children. And we touched a little bit on the MDT earlier, but as forensic interviewer and advocate, it is so awesome to see that there are so many eyes on these children, so many different individuals working on these cases. So like, for example, if a case gets dropped on the state level, there's still a chance that the tribal side can pick it up. And like I said, we are hand in hand, and we are in constant contact. Like I said, if Carrie, she emails me on a sometimes twice a week, but weekly basis, asking for any intakes we may have had or anything like that. So these kids are constantly being monitored, and I think that is the biggest takeaway for us that I'm seeing, along with the advocacy program, because we also have parents. As a CAC, we're the middlemen, and so we're the ones the parents contact when they have questions and things like that. And so we're able to use this collaboration with Choctaw Nation to help these parents get services as well, or the caregivers, and to help them find other people to talk to get updates on the cases, things that we may not be able to here at the CAC. So like I said, the victims I feel like they're able to be serviced and all around, like a spider web around the whole victim. Everything's has a way to help them.
Wraparound services. It provides
wraparound
services.
Yes. Yeah.
That's great. So our next question is, what advice, and I'm going to direct this to Carrie and Sandy, and then I'll ask Beth and Jessica, but what advice would you give for existing non-tribal CACs who are looking to expand services in partnership with tribes? What advice would you give them? Maybe what steps do you think are important to take in the beginning to develop kind of this collaboration or successful collaboration that you have with your non-tribal partners?
My best piece of advice is to go into it ready to listen and ready to learn. We all tend to see things from our bubble. And when we have this many people working together, even for a common goal, it's easy to hear what you want to hear or pick up on what you want to pick up on. But getting that whole piece, really listening to how people do things and why they do things, is so important. You get so much knowledge from these conversations. And once you build those relationships, the rest of the business just kind of takes care of itself. Once you are a person that is easy to deal with and willing to be educated, the rest just kind of falls into place.
Sandy, did you have anything?
Definitely. I agree with Carrie. Because you do have so many different parts of your family coming in or so, it is sitting around that round table and listening and working together, because without the communication, your team's going to fail. It's not a competition, you know, we do have to put the child first and the families first, and figure out, you know, how to work together as the team. Like Jessica and Beth said, we haven't had any problems. I think we have worked closely together that if we do see an issue arise, we're able to address it, and not afraid to go to the team and be able to say, look, this is what's going on. Let's work on this before it gets bigger. So I think communication is really important in developing your team.
Beth, do you and Jessica want to answer that about those first steps?
For me, the biggest first step was recognizing that just because it works with non-native kids doesn't mean it's going to work with native kids. One of the things I've had to learn a lot in my time at the CAC is there are cultural differences, and that's okay. That's totally acceptable. And I need to put what I think should happen aside to meet the needs of the family where they're at. So not only are we meeting the needs of the family where they're at, but as a state CAC, we have to meet the needs of our tribal entities where they're at. And they have different needs than necessarily what I think they should need. So making sure I can see that is my biggest piece of advice. Make sure you can see the need from another perspective.
Still fresh in this position, but my first step was to network and to reach out, because that's excuse me, my biggest piece of advice is to not be afraid to ask or not be afraid to make those calls. And like they talked about, you have to be able to learn and listen and accept advice from your team members, because there's no way a single entity can do this job. We have to depend on each other. And so, don't be, if someone's wanting a service, or if you're wanting more information, make the phone call or send the email, because the best part about this business or the work that we do is that we're not competitive. We all want to see each other succeed. We all want to see that success. And we all want to see each other have every resource available. So not being afraid to speak up, or to, like I said, network, to introduce yourself to everyone involved, to really get, like Sandy said, that team built, because you've got to have that team to succeed here. I think that's my biggest piece of advice.
Deanna, we have a quick question from the chat, and it's from Brenda. And I don't know, Brenda, if you want to unmute and maybe go a little bit further, but her question is, she's asking if you can give an example of something not working with tribal that does work with non-tribal. So I'm not sure if you want to expand upon that, Brenda, a little bit.
That was just what she had said, that just because it works in one population, it doesn't necessarily. And I was just wondering if she could give an example of that. So, for example.
Thank
So
you.
what I've witnessed and what I've seen, particularly in our therapy, I've seen there are certain types of therapy that our Native American therapist does that our non-Native therapist doesn't always utilize, because there are cultural needs that are needed on that side that we don't have on the non-Native side. So Tori is really good about working within those cultural needs and speaking with our victims in a way that fits within their culture. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think you answered my question. I was just wondering if that was also true in the interview room for the forensic interview. And
There is a difference working with tribal and non-tribal. I'm sorry, somebody's vacuuming. I hope it's not picking up.
No, it's not.
So not just in the forensic interview room, we do have to be knowledgeable of working with tribal and non-tribal children, especially with body language, eye contact, silence, because sometimes tribal members are told not to talk, and so we have to be comfortable with the silence. Another thing that I see working with the MDT, working with non-tribal families can sometimes be easier because it's on a state level. And so you have, your state or county law enforcement there, and then you have your DHS. With tribal, depending on your cases and the caseloads, I might walk in to the observation room and have tribal law enforcement, ICW, DHS, and maybe a local or county there. Because first, they're trying to establish jurisdiction. And do we have a family with tribal and non-tribal children? That gets a little difficult. And it is frustrating because we have so many guidelines, so many protocols. So there is a big difference in working with your tribal and non-tribal and making sure that the family is covered regardless of where they're at.
And something as simple as decorations within your CAC, you kind of have to be cognizant of that. So something that I learned recently from, I'm pretty sure Deanna told me this, as well as Tori, our Native American therapist, is within their cultures, owl decorations. I love owl decorations. I think they're super cute. But within certain cultures, those are a bad omen and those are scary. So I had to move owl decorations in my office out because I didn't want to make a kid who walked by my office feel uncomfortable due to just something that I thought was cute, but to them was not okay. So even something as simple as that and how you decorate your family rooms should be considered.
Highly suggest, I know on VOCA, the VOCA website, they have a lot of different online trainings, specifically in cultural awareness and diversity. And I think there's even one specifically for tribal children and members. And I highly recommend it because as someone who is trained in trauma response, like Sandy was talking about as a forensic interviewer, some body language might be thought to be a different response than what it actually is, when it's actually a sign of respect or disrespect to their culture, not necessarily what we're looking for as forensic interviewers or investigators. So like I said, I just highly recommend any type of online cultural diversity awareness and training for everyone at the CAC, because that's not just in the forensic interview room, that's for the waiting room as well. All advocates, I think, should know kind of what's the norm, or what's what not to be worried about, I guess you could say, not to be looking for all these signs of trauma when it could just be a normal behavior.
Yeah. Jessica, are you talking about what VOCA training are you talking about? We have a lot of people asking about if you would maybe send me that link and I can send it out to everyone.
Right now, I actually have it saved in my favorites because I'm on there on the regular basis. And like I said, I highly recommend everyone create an account, because you can there are so many things on there, but you could do an entire, I think it's like a 40-hour training, but everything's online and you can pick your modules as you go. But there's multiple ones regarding cultural diversity and awareness. And even tribal law, there's one on there as well. And I think that's pretty important because like as Sandy was talking about with the jurisdiction, we run into that a lot as well. Having multiple officers here, we're trying to figure that situation out. But I'm going to send this website to you right now. That way you can get the link out to them. But like I said, I highly recommend it for everyone.
Yep. So I'll send that out in an email for everyone once the training is done, so that we can make sure that everybody gets that. It sounds like some really good training, and is this on the it's all,
Office for Victims of
yeah,
Crime.
yeah, it's the
Yeah, training and technical.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, that's an amazing website, and all of those resources are free. And so that's always a win-win. But I'll for sure send that out today to everyone that's registered. The one of the things from the Native Child Resource Center that we had asked about prior to, I'm going to throw an extra question in on you guys, is about formalizing these relationships that you have together. And I know that that's one of the things that Carrie did in the beginning when she sent out MOUs. But can you kind of talk about that, Carrie, just a little bit about that, that kind of formalizing those relationships and why you feel that that is important?
Absolutely. It's important. So it gives everybody a level playing field. Like there are no questions about what people expect. So our Choctaw Nation MDT and CAC MOU is pretty straightforward and simple. It basically says that the CACs agree to provide services to Native American children. It says that they have the option to use our forensic interviewers. And so that doesn't take away kind of from their resources. It says that when we are able to provide additional support to them, that we do so. And it is that all parties agree to communicate with each other. And so it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple, but that just lets everybody know where we're at and what our goals are, and so that we can meet those goals. I also have signed on to any of the county MDTs that have asked me to. There are some in the reservation that do not want me to be a part of theirs, and that's fine. That's their choice. But when I am invited to those, I do sign their protocols, and I am in attendance every time I can be in attendance, either virtually or in person. And I make sure that I have updates that I can provide, that I have the information that they're looking for from me. So that kind of goes both ways for us.
And that is something that Carrie and I are working on too, with opening up both the CACs, because we do have one that is specific to the tribal MOU. So we will have to work together on a non-tribal MOU. We're putting that together. But whenever we first started with the CAC, we both talked about how do we want to run it. And as you can see, we have the Ani House and we have the Ani Justice Center. So we kept the name the same. And also talking about the center, we wanted to keep everything the same. The way that she ran hers and the way that I run mine, so that if any MDT, law enforcement, child welfare, come into our centers, they know what to expect. It's going to be pretty much the same setup. That way they're not saying, well, she does it this way, she does it this way. They know, regardless of where they're at. So I think that's something that's going to be very beneficial to everyone that comes in, even our non-tribal members, team coming in, is that it's all set up the same and they know what to expect between both centers.
Beth, do you and Jessica find a benefit in having those signed MOUs?
Oh, for sure. I have found that because it's formalized, there's no question. And when community members come to me or other entities and say, well, why are you working with them this way? I have a document that I can say, because this is what we agreed to and this is what it says. And I always have that to fall back on if I'm ever questioned as to why we're doing something the way we're doing it.
Documentation, of course, as we all know in this field, is the most important thing. And so we sign, I think it's on a yearly basis, have it re-signed or re-up the contract on a yearly basis. But as CAC, statewide CACs, we're searching for grants on a daily basis. And so having these types of documents and contracts to show, sustainability plans, or whatever it may be that, we're working on, these are all crucial to anything that we could be doing. Like I said, it's unbelievable how many different variables that even this one little MOU can affect or, help us with. So it's, like she said, it's great to have that document as well if we ever do get questioned as to why we operate the way we do, but haven't had that issue yet. So
our next question is about barriers to developing these relationships. And I think as we look just across the United States, we just want to give people maybe some ideas about barriers, and then maybe even how we overcame those barriers. Or if there's been barriers that you've had that maybe you couldn't overcome and you had to sever relationships, or just talking about barriers and how you overcame those. So do you want to, does anybody want to start, or I've kind of been picking
I'll
on
go really
Carrie.
quick, just because I have one quick one. We have obviously, so I think I'm assuming most of the CACs operate from a board as well. But if there's ever a situation where our MDT is making a request, and this could be like a tribal, everyone on our MDT is making a request for something and our board doesn't agree, that has been a barrier for me or for our center personally. And so to overcome that barrier, I had to step up as advocate, not just MDT coordinator, but advocate for our MDT team to make sure that our board understands why decisions are being made. And a lot of people here will probably understand that barrier, but just being an advocate for your, like I said, what your team or whatever the barrier may be. That's been my most recent one, to make sure our board is on the same page and understands why I'm making the decisions I'm having to make.
Good.
So
For me, the biggest barrier is distance. I mean, we are all spread apart. I wish that, I could attend all of these MDTs in person every month. The Choctaw Nation has investigators that I see, once a month at MDT, because they're housed up on the north end or east of here. And so to overcome that, I am just accessible. Like, I am accessible. People typically do not have to wait for responses for me. If they do, it's because I've missed an email somewhere or something like that. But, everyone has my cell phone number. I answer it when it rings. I respond via text, email, FaceTime, Teams, like whatever you want to do. I just have made sure that when people need me, they can get to me in a very reasonable amount of time.
Mine,
Oh, I'm sorry, Sandy. I was just going to kind of give some people that maybe aren't aware, and I didn't do this early, and I apologize, is the Choctaw Reservation is located in southeastern Oklahoma, and it covers 10.5 counties. So it is a really big land area. And so Carrie is located in Durant, and then her CACs are kind of dispersed in the reservation. And then Sandy's located in McAllister, the same thing. The CACs are dispersed in the reservation. So just to kind of give you some background of when she talks about the distance from her, it could be 3 hours away. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Sandy.
no.
Oh, sorry.
And that's, yes, because depending on where I'm needed, I have to have at least an hour to 2 hour drive time, to get to where I'm needed. So almost all the investigators that I work with or so know that if I'm having to drive, I try not to start anything before 10 o'clock, just so I can get my bearings. But barriers, I think as a forensic interviewer, is the team knowing what their role is. I have, as a forensic interviewer, had some problems of how I do my interviews, or what can I say, or how can I conduct the interviews, and us not re-victimizing the child. So training, MDT training is very important, so that your whole team knows what everybody's role is. Because I will sometimes get in a forensic interview and then I will have an investigator say, well, ask them this. And I tell them I can't, or I have a child welfare worker wanting me to ask things that I cannot ask as an interviewer. And so then it just kind of confuses everybody. So I strongly recommend MDT trainings on how your team, how their roles are for each team member.
Okay. Beth, do you want to talk about barriers to this that you've had to overcome, or?
I think thinking about barriers, I think the biggest barrier that we've had to face is just team members coming in, whether they're tribal or non-tribal, and having had a bad experience somewhere else. So they're coming in, working with us, anticipating that we're going to have the same bad experience. When in reality, LCAN and Choctaw Nation have worked together for, like I said, as long as I know. And so we have a great relationship already established, but because somebody else didn't, they want to put that on us. So that's been our biggest barrier. And the way we've overcome it is just by showing them the step-by-step process of, hey, here's how I work with Choctaw Nation. Here's how I work with this entity, and giving them words to their frustration, but also giving them solutions to their frustration before it gets too big. And that's both on a family side and with investigators, ICW, whomever. So.
Yeah,
So-
I don't know if you had a chance to check there's a question in the chat too about cross training for MDTs.
Okay. Yeah. So we have a question about what you've done to help cross-train the MDTs so that everyone understands their roles. And that also, I'll expand that even a little bit more, is what have you done to cross-train your MDTs to understand the tribal sovereignty and then the state? Have you done some specific trainings to talk about what that looks like?
We're actually talking on Monday about maybe coming together and to work on some not only team building exercises, but I want to actually do a MDT orientation for any new members or even existing members that need a refresher. And so, but like I said, that's still in the works. But I think any type of meeting like that or training with your MDT, I'm still reaching out for information on that as far as like some of the details. But like I said, Carrie had mentioned maybe teaming up and trying to get some of that going for like June or July-ish, somewhere around there, so that we can, like I said, get some refreshers and some new members information on how we operate and what, like Sandy was saying, what each position does.
So for us, we typically every April, because it's Child Abuse Awareness Month, hold some kind of MDT training as far as orientation as to what are the expectations of the LeFlore Latimer County team. And we've started integrating some Choctaw Nation elements into that as well. So we have ICW. What does Sarah Tucker do? Forget what her role is.
Family preservation.
So we have ICW family preservation as well as tribal investigators on our MDT. And so they come to those trainings as well. So they're getting both our side as well as the training that Carrie provides for and the expectations of her team, which has worked really well. So, and it's a nice refresher for those of us who've been on the team for a while, but we have such turnover with some of our other agencies that I probably could do that training quarterly and would have new people at every training. But it's worked out really nice.
Carrie, do
I
you
can-
guys? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm just going to mention a manual. That was an idea too, because like she said, the new employees, especially with CPS, we do have a large turnover rate. So I'm trying to build a manual with whatever our training or new MBT orientation is going to be is kind of in the works in my head too somehow. So that way we can at least, give them a copy to go off of until we can get them into the next training. So yeah.
Our roles are very clearly defined in our protocols. As far as the expectations from each component. We do a lot of conversating about what what family violence can do to help family preservation, what family preservation can do to help tribal custody. And so it's just kind of rolling. I need to set up an MDT refresher because we've been here for a year now, so it's time. And so that's something that'll be coming down the pipes for us.
Also, another suggestion to forensic interviewing training is not just for the forensic interviewer. So if you're able to send a team, it can be your prosecution, it can be your law enforcement, your child welfare, along with your forensic interviewer. The training goes through from beginning of your case to the end and shows pretty much what role everybody has and how to make your case stronger, and how prosecution can work with the forensic interviewer whenever they're testifying in court, what law enforcement needs for their investigation side, when they're searching the home for, items that were used or so, along with child welfare. Even if you can't send them, to a training or so, I know there is some programs that will come in, and they're not necessarily training your investigators to interview, but it's giving them an idea of that process and why we can only ask questions the way that we do, or, and how to make it stronger. Because like Carrie was saying, the MDT is brand new. So within a year, most of our investigators have never worked a child abuse case. And I'm walking them through it, and kind of teaching and training. And of course, that's where I can contact Carrie and say, hey, we need help. I know I've reached out to Bethany, before and said, hey, as a forensic interviewer, can I pick your brain? So it's really helpful to have those trainings in place.
So just as a kind of wrap up, I just wanted to kind of put out there if there was anything that you guys thought that maybe I haven't asked, but you think is important to let people know about this collaboration that you have with each other.
Reiterating the not being afraid to reach out. I'm just repeating that again because I wouldn't. There's no way I could have made it without any of these ladies and a lot of my other contacts. There's just no way. So, and I'm calling. They're probably going to get annoyed by the end of the month. To be honest with you, it's still the first month for me, but I have a whole contact list that I've been just going down the line, learning new things. So just reach out anytime. Like I said, everyone's here to help everyone. So.
And get to know your tribal investigators. That's the biggest thing that I would say is I have learned so much just about tribal protocol and tribal law just by spending time visiting with my tribal investigators. One of my investigators just got promoted and left, so I'm kind of mad at him. But I could
I'm
call
pretty
him.
mad about that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super salty that Zach's gone. But I could call him and say, Zach, I don't understand this. And he always took the time to explain to me why either the tribal prosecutor's office had to do something or MDT had to do something that I didn't understand. So make those law enforcement tribal connections as well as kind of the upper people, because they're the boots on the ground and they see these families a lot, probably a lot more than we do. And they have knowledge that we don't always have. So law enforcement can be your best friend in this process.
Well, I appreciate you guys, and as someone that's worked with all of you, I can attest to how wonderful they all are. I'm going to do a quick shameless plug for the Native Child Advocacy Resource Center, that we do provide those kinds of trainings for MDT and CACs, and we're lucky that we can do that free of charge. To come on site and work with teams and tribal nations developing those. So if you ever need us, when I send the email out today, then or you have my email because I've sent you this for the training, but I'll also include some contact information. We have a website. It's nativechildadvocacyresource.com, and no, it's .com. I think so. I'll send that out too today. And there's a training and technical assistance button. You can ask for training and technical assistance through that website. But we certainly appreciate you attending today, and we are so excited to pass on these great collaborations and partnerships and kind of showcase them. So we thank you guys for attending, and we thank our wonderful panelists for being here. Yeah, Jen shared the nativecac.org in the chat if you want to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.